So when I hear overtraining and burning out, I think of high school and middle school as a gymnast and training 4 hours a day during the school year, so between September and June. And then in the summer it was 5 to 6 hours a day, 5 to 6 days a week for 5 weeks over the summer. So it kind of deteriorates your body, just like training that much. You would do cardio and conditioning and then training all your skills. And then during the year, you kind of taper down your conditioning, but you increase your routines, so that's more skills. And it takes a toll on your brain, and it takes a toll on your emotions and your mental status and how you function in school. And then it ends up taking over your body and your joints and bones, honestly, your muscles. And even though you're conditioning, you're still kind of getting weaker from just training and training. And in college it gets better because you have athletic trainers, but I know that my club gym, we didn't have any trainers. It was basically if something hurts, stick an ice pack on it, and if not, suck it up. So that's probably not a really great training idea, but that's just kind of what I got used to. And then I ended up getting really hurt my sophomore year of high school, so that kind of was my burnout point.
I got burnt out, I would say, summer going into my sophomore year with soccer, and it got to a point where I didn't want to actually play the sport anymore. I just wanted to train and get in really good shape for the sport. So it was kind of weird, not like the traditional burnout that I actually ever thought would happen to me.
Maybe doing too many workouts in a small amount of time before a competition. Like, you don't want to do a hard lift right before a big competition, because you'll be sore, and by the time you actually get to the competition, you're going to be exhausted and not going to be able to perform at your highest, and that's when injury can occur.
I think of being mentally and physically fatigued, especially in track. I think we do a lot of the same kind of training, and I think if you overtrain, you kind of are more susceptible to getting injured, and I definitely have dealt with that.
Overtraining, I guess, would be like pushing your body to more than it's capable of doing, not being able to train, like, to know your body and, like, to know overcapacity. So, like, if you're running and, like, you feel something abnormal in your body and you keep training past that, even though you know that you probably shouldn't.
For running, at least, people putting in too many miles and either getting injured, like a stress fracture, or just having fatigue all the time and not being able to perform to their top level that they can achieve.
I do, because it's really important to keep your body as healthy as possible, and when you overtrain, you're putting your body at risk to push you towards either burning out or to have an injury that could cause you your athletic career.
I definitely think it's a serious issue in long distance running, especially because some people get really obsessed with running and think that more miles equals faster times, when in reality there's definitely a limit to how much you should be running a day. And if you overtrain, you're, like I said, you're going to either get injured or you're just never going to have any time for recovery.
I think it's a serious issue because I don't think enough people are aware of it, and I feel like people tend to overtrain a lot and then they get injured and then they're kind of back to square one, and that definitely keeps them from competing at their best potential. I think that overtraining is a serious issue because when you overtrain, you not only mentally deteriorate yourself and you can end up with mental blocks or other issues, but you're also destroying your body, and that if you don't give yourself those 1 or 2 days to rest, or even a week if you need it, you're never going to like reboot, your body's never going to build back up, and you're just going to keep breaking it down, and that's what causes injuries. And a lot of those times those injuries were so preventable, and that you end up wasting time in the long run anyway with those, so you should definitely just like take your chance.
Yeah, I think it can be a problem because if you overtrain, you're tiring out your body and you can't actually hit your maximum potential, and it can lead to a lot of injuries that down the line can cause severe problems for a person.
You might fall out of love with the sport, you know, like you play the sport for fun, and when you overdo anything, you're just not going to play at the optimal levels that you can.
It's all about the personality type, because I think that certain people are fine at training every second of it every day.
It can be. It just depends on like the coach or what people are doing, and it can become a serious problem. And like if it keeps going on, keep performing the same way, you're not getting enough rest, you're not putting the right stuff in your body, you're just overtraining yourself.
When you're training so much, you get like so involved in your sport that you can like start to distance yourself from your family because like you're so into training or with your family. Like,
I feel like when you start to burn out, it affects you physically at first, so you feel tired and you feel unmotivated, and then if you are injured like I was, the pain is just like too much to handle, so you just get uncomfortable, and then because you're in pain, you don't perform as well, so then you get frustrated with yourself, and that frustration just builds up and you end up getting upset with yourself and you're not motivated, and you just kind of dig yourself into a hole. And I think that's kind of when you start figuring out that if you don't want to be there and if you're not motivated to train, then like what's the point of being there? So then you kind of just like have this cycle. It's kind of tumultuous that just like gets after you, and you just end up like needing to have your space, and you have to have it, otherwise it's not worth being there anymore. It's just not productive.
I guess just personally, my indicators were just the fact that I loved to think about this sport and like imagine myself playing it, but I didn't actually like to play anymore. And like I didn't want to be out on the field. I didn't want to have anything to do with it. Or like the summer before, that's all I wanted to do. So it was just kind of like a change of focus all of a sudden, and that was my personal indicator.
When you're physically tired, it starts like in the front part of your brain, you know, like you're stressed out and everything like that, and it slowly works its way back and affects every part of your body. So when you're overtired and you're not getting enough sleep and rest and recovery, then you're not going to be able to perform and play like you know you can. And like for me, like in my sport, I know that 80% of it is all mental, and the next like 20% is physical, like skill and everything like that. So you have to be able to rest and play the best that you can.
Lack of sleep or problems sleeping, stressed out, mental inability to really focus, kind of.
I would definitely say mental fatigue and lack of focus. Anything from like being able to do your homework to relationships with friends and family, and not being able to focus at practice and in competitions, but also with things in everyday life.
I would say the biggest psychological factor in overtraining is just becoming really obsessed with the idea, just like the idea in your mind that more miles equals faster times, and that concept can just eat at you, so you always feel like you need to get extra miles in. So if everyone runs like 5 miles, you just think in your head, oh, I should do 6 or 7. And just that psychological factor of always thinking you need to do more miles to have faster times, I think is probably the biggest motivating factor.
So ultimately the first thing I would do is say, why do you feel you're overtrained, and what do you really think overtraining is? That's going to then lead the conversation a couple different ways, because I would be looking for the athlete to, you know, potentially say things on the line like, I'm really tired, or I feel like I'm not getting better, or I'm like feeling like I don't want to come to practice anymore. Or even if the athlete knows a lot about overtraining, could talk about having elevated heart rates in the morning. So those would be the kind of key things that I would be seeing, how educated the athlete was about what overtraining really was, and if then any of those things fell in line to really what overtraining was. And then I would kind of step in and say, overtraining really is a result of lack of recovery. And the same things that get you to overtraining are the same things that get you to improve performance. The difference is what you do following that overload of training. So if you overload training and you don't get good nutrition, good rest, you don't have enough iron in your diet, or kinds of things that would lead an athlete into sort of this chronic fatigue state. Overtraining is not just a physical component, but it is also the physiological component. So an athlete truly isn't overtrained yet. They might be like overstressed or overstrained, but overtraining really isn't until you get the mood aspect where the athlete just is not motivated and doesn't want to come to practice. So not sure if the athlete would be coming to me in one of those stages, or truly to like, I don't really want to be here, I'm not motivated, I don't want to do this anymore. And if they're at that point where it truly is overtraining, then basically they need to totally back off and rest. Questions I would ask them: what are you doing outside of regular practice? Because as a coach, I've been doing a training program long enough to know that if the athlete is following it and getting adequate rest, they shouldn't be overtrained. So what kind of stuff are you doing? Are you doing extra running? Are you doing extra, lifting? How much sleep are you getting a night?
Well, I'd really look at how they're performing in the gym, and if they lost the love for the sport. That happens a lot when kids are burnt out, and I think there's a strong correlation between overtraining and burnout, mentally, obviously, as physically. The way I structure our practices and our training during season, there isn't much time, or we pretty much, have them working at a commitment level where they're working really hard on the weight room and in the gym. And if they, sometimes I'll get athletes come in that feel like they're addicted to running or something, or being in the gym on the elliptical or the bike. And when they are overtraining, they're not able to execute the skills properly. It's not fun to play. And it makes me nervous whether or not they're going to be able to continue at the level that I need them to play at. We've had athletes, get injuries where stress fractures in their shins to shin splints. If they haven't told me they were training, I usually can figure it out, or if they have any problems with their lower backs from any repetitive overuse injury. You can tell that with the shoulder sometimes. And so for me as a coach, I really have to talk with my athletes and find out what they're doing, why they feel the need to have to run 5 miles a day during season after we've already put in 2 hours in the gym and an hour in the weight room. So that's where the problem lies, is their need to overtrain. And once we figure that out, that they'll be able to play at a higher level when they cut out all that extra activity. They'll feel better, they'll be healthier, and they'll be happier, and we get a shot at